welcome back to another episode of the Den Way podcast. I got a cool episode today. I talked to Rhonda Taylor.
That's correct.
Yes, ma'am. How you doing today?
Good. How are you doing? Is it nice and sunny there, or is it? Did you get the rain already?
I haven't got any rain here in Tennessee, so
Okay.
That's a good thing right there because I'm tired of rain. I'm tired of the rain. So
I'm sure you guys probably got hit pretty good. We've had 9 days of no rain, and that's
of no rain.
No rain in 9 days. I think Thursday is the first day that they're talking we might get rain, so we're ready for it. We need it.
I heard that. So where you from? Where you live at?
I live in Indianapolis, Indiana. So I'm right in the center, about two hours from Chicago, and but right in the middle of Indiana. We're right in the Midwest, the Corn Belt, but it's still a big city. It's like the 16th biggest city in the United States.
Wow, that's cool. Now did you grow up there? Were you raised there? Or you just lived there?
I live here in Indianapolis. I grew up in a very small town. It's still in Indiana. And then I went to college in Texas and Utah and Indiana. But I came back because it's home. Once you think you're going to be better off someplace else, but you always end up coming home, don't you?
Yeah, well, I'm from Maryland, and I went to school here in Cleveland, Tennessee, and I moved back for a little bit, and I ended up coming back to. And that became my home. It felt more like home than home did. So I had a mom that left, that was out the state. My brother joined the military. So it was pretty much time for me to start my own life and do what I do. So I ended up making a home here in Cleveland, Tennessee, which I enjoyed living in the South. It was a lot different from living up north, so I definitely enjoyed that. So what did you go to school for?
Well, I went in school for business, believe it or not, even though I'm a best-selling novelist and write, now for a living in the academic world. I kind of bought into you have to be an expert in something that you can make a living off of, that you can thrive in. I'm an entrepreneur. I own my own consulting company now. But as I developed in school, I've got a doctorate in business. I found that I was better at the soft skills, the people skills. And I found that people is what make the world go round. And so for me, I found that for me to be prepared for the world, I needed to also be able to give back to the world and practice positivity and develop others. And so that's what I built my career around, is building others up and making sure that they were thriving, including myself. What about you?
Yeah, so I went for psychology. It was something I didn't really know what to do. Well, it's a Christian school, so I originally started to do discipleship ministries, but then I realized I didn't really want that. So, I needed to pick a major, I guess, and where I think if I wanted to go in that direction in a church, I could with psychology, but if I wanted to go a secular job, I could do with psychology. But yeah, I didn't really know. I think that I would have done well doing communications or something like that. I like the media things, but I just at that time I just didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I wish I would have switched things up. It's life. Life happens.
Yeah, I think all of us, when we first start out and picking up our educational goals, we really don't know. Like, for me, I think I would have thrived in psychology. Because my, business, because I thought, my dad's an entrepreneur. And when I said I thought maybe I'd want to go into therapy, you know what he told me? Only idiots want to help other idiots. so He's like, go make some money. Don't put yourself in that situation. And but that was something that I find that I really enjoy is working with others and helping them. So you're right. When you first go into college, you really don't know. You think you know, but you don't know what the path that life is going to bring you. And so, you kind of have to just stay focused on that core to make sure you get those core classes and the core out, and then maybe declare if you don't know, because then once you get the core out, maybe you have an idea of what you're naturally good at.
Yes, ma'am. I get that. So, you said that you had a consulting business. What do you do with that? I'm interested in that.
Sure. So, it started out with a journey like we were talking about, where I really didn't know, and I was in fashion, and then I went into education. I decided that because I was good at mentoring people, I would go into the, not high school, but the college level of people that maybe struggled in school, because I had learning disabilities when I was younger. And so I started in the private colleges, and I was a campus director and an adjunct teacher. And during that period of time, I lost my adopted son. He was at work, and someone came in with a gun and they shot him. And I found that I needed
Sorry
to
to hear
make
that.
I needed to make a change. I couldn't deal every day with that same level of, of maturity, the same age group. He was in his 20s. He was a bouncer. And so I was like, what is needed out there? What is it? What is a need that people have to have? And, that's any business. You have to be able to meet a need. And what am I still going to get fulfillment? But then how can I still protect myself emotionally from the world? Because I was raw. And I started out with, okay, people need to know how to decide what their career field is. So I started career development. Like we said, most people don't know. And during that period of time, most people didn't know how really to use computers well enough to even look for a job, because this is when computers were taking over, the early 2000s.
Yes.
People are like, oh, this resume isn't getting any calls. And that's because the resumes don't work like they used to. They have to be optimized, and computers have to read them. And so I started out there helping people navigate the new workplace. And then I was like, well, how can I add to that? And I was like, as I started getting stronger in my abilities to thrive again in the world under, such tragedy, I found that, okay, I'm also still good at the mentoring. So I started taking on helping people build their own businesses, doing writing plans, doing the things that I had strengths in, doing strategy. And then I even moved a little further back into the academic world, where I started doing academic writing for, doctors and people that had their doctorate or getting their doctorate that needed mentors or people to peer review their processes. So I guess the message in all that is, I found me through tragedy.
Yes, ma'am.
I found that I could thrive. And I always was a person that believed in building one's life, through no matter what the lesson is that they have to learn. It could be drugs and alcohol that they're trying to get over. It could be, an ending of a relationship. It could be any tragedy. But when we find our story of success, because we all have one, no matter how bad it's gotten or what our bottoms were or whatever, when we can find our story of success, then we thrive. And in my case, the story of success was that I could bounce back up no matter how hard the world tried to take away, whether it be a loved one or an illness or whatever it was that was coming at me. If I didn't let life jack me, then they wouldn't jack the ones around me that I was working with, because we could work on the skills together and build each other up and learn from each other.
And that's exactly what it's supposed to be. You're supposed to have a community. We're supposed to be there for each other and things like that. So I get that. So it's good that you found purpose, your purpose, helping other people out and finding their purpose. So I've always liked that. You talk about academic writing. Is that when you found your love for writing, or when did you start to really like to write? You say you're an author, so.
Yeah. So Crossroads, which is my fiction novel, came about after I turned in a proposal at work, and someone said I had a typographical error in it.
Okay.
And I knew that this was one of my learning challenges. So I'm like, one day I'm going to write a best-selling novel. So I put it in my head. There was even though they took my proposal and they implemented it and it was still successful, it was a scar to me. It was like, wow, I can't even turn in a document without, and to this day, even when I'm doing text messages, I'm one of those friends that, when you text message and then you look at it and you're like, what the heck were they saying? Because I don't see the errors until after I hit send. Once I've seen send, I put my glasses on, because I still have them. See, I got them right here. I can see them, right? And then it's like, oops, let me correct all those errors that I sent. So, so it became an idea. And then I was working in the community doing a crime watch and watching over the legal system in Indianapolis and looking at different cases. And it was just amazing, the inequality, and that there is no winners in the system. Even if you think that, it's the victim family and they win, that's not a win, because they still have a loss. If it's the prosecutor and they have a win, that's still not a win, because you have all these people's lives that have been impacted. If it's the defense, it doesn't matter who's in that room, everybody's a loser. Because there's a loss involved in it. And as I was watching it, and I was watching how people navigate and how they have to intertwine. This is probably the most inclusive you're going to get, as seeing housewives that are on the jury with professionals, and somebody that, maybe, is on their lunch break, or, and you have all these people, you have the plaintiff, and you have all these people interacting that would never have interacted before. And so I came up with the idea of Crossroads, which is a novel based 1982, where technology wasn't taking over, and all the new ways in crime and investigating crimes. And I made all the settings real settings in Indianapolis. So if someone reads it, they see the sites, they feel the sites, and it's about a executive that's a workaholic that gets called to jury duty, and everything falls apart because she can't get out of the jury duty. And in that time, things start happening to her. So it's up to the Indianapolis Police Department to find out why her life is falling apart. So it's a crime on top of a crime. And so they're running around trying to figure out why something's happening to the foreman of the jury. And in that, I'm hoping that people explore their own practices of dealing with each other. And in Proverbs, it says, anger is cruel, which anger causes a lot of crimes. Fury is overwhelming. Fury causes a lot of crimes. So there's another motive that can happen. But who can stand before jealousy? Envy makes the bones rot. And if you think about that, that's a very deep thought about what we go through every day in our lives. You could want a bigger house. You could want a nicer car. You could, you could want some better technology. Whatever your wants are that you become envious of of somebody else, you're stealing from yourself. You're robbing your own joy.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And so I try to love my life and, support other people. But like say my life is just as good as this person because I don't really know what's going on in this person's life anyway. It sounds like or it looks like they're doing good, but inside they might be dying or, miserable. So I, I'm in a wheelchair. I don't know if you've seen that. I'm in a wheelchair. So it's easy for me to try to compare my life to other people and that could do stuff. And just like, no, I still live a blessed life. And so I definitely understand not wanting to be envious and try not to be envious of a person. And I like saying that in the justice system, everybody loses because we lost somebody, somebody's been lost. And I like that perspective because nobody really talks about that perspective of it.
No, and
we talk about people.
You don't even look at it from even a person in a jury. They're losing their time. They're losing their innocence of thought. Because now there's what it's like to be in this situation. The judge, they have the most power in there, and they may lose something in that process too. Because
yes, ma'am.
They're seeing things and they're exposed to things daily that maybe they didn't want to see. Whether it be photos or just disrespect or too much respect or there's so many different ways that it can taint a person's personality and who they are. So it redefines self because it takes away even your own security of what is out there in the world. So you by embracing that new identity, that means you have to change too. Because no matter where you are, you got to change because you're looking at perspectives that you never saw before.
I definitely understand that, and I like that. Can you put your book back up? I want to say it again. I'm sorry, I didn't take a drink.
That's okay. So Crossroads is the title of it, and it's a suspense novel. And this is Indianapolis in the back. And the railroad track is where the dead body's found. For those that are in Indianapolis, it's found on 38th and Guyan on the railroad tracks, where is an area that's very desolate. It is not true crime; it's a fiction crime, but it kind of portrays in the first chapter. Not only is it the finding of the young girl's body, but the innocence that's lost to the whole system. There's a police officer that's a rookie cop, first murdered site. There's the officer there and trying to help them navigate it. And then you have this young 15-year-old girl that's lost her life. And then they have, to start the investigation of it. But it's set up that way so that you realize the loss that happens, period. It doesn't matter whether it's, something small that's happened that's gotten people in the legal loss is there, the loss of innocence, period. So with it being a young girl, that's what it does. But then you end up, having other feelings too as you go through it, because you don't know what you don't know until you see it,
Yes, ma'am. I get that. I like that a lot. Now, are you into? You say it wasn't true crime. Are you into true crime podcasts and things like that?
I watch, like if we were playing a scavenger hunt of shows to watch and we had to pick our favorite, crime thrillers and stuff, every single one of them I've probably watched, whether it be 48 Hours, whether it be, Law and Order, whether it be all of them, I'm addicted. And when I wrote Crossroads, I wanted it to be real. So I would listen to 911 calls. I went on rides with police. I went and read stories of the serial killers where they wrote their memoirs, or they had where you couldn't even take them
Okay.
out of the library because they weren't allowed in the public. You had to read them in the reference guides. And
Wow.
I think a lot of it has to do with wanting to understand maybe the psychology. And Crossroads was endorsed by Meryl Hemingway. Now, you may be a little young to know who she is. She was an Academy Award-winning actress, but her grandfather is Ernest Hemingway, the famous author of The Old Man and the Sea. And one of the reasons I liked Crossroads was because for every character, I do what they call a soap note. And those in the community, that's where you go into the doctor and you tell them what you see and what you feel and how you feel. And then the doctor turns around and they take those notes and then they do the assessment of you and then they write what they actually see. So it may not be. And then I do a DSM-5 assessment, which is a psychology assessment of their mental challenge. Every one of them have something. Every one of the characters, because we all have something. It could be a learning challenge. It can be a mental health struggle, depression, anxiety. And so when they get into a scene, if they have emphysema, they're going to cough. If they get, if they're excited about something or in a a tense scene and they have anxiety, they're going to feel like they're having a heart attack. And so, and Meryl Hemingway's really into mental health and taking care of self.
Yes, ma'am. So, once you get into you wrote a book. So, are you a big book reader?
I do. Yeah, I do read.
Oh.
I read. I mean, obviously with my academic writing, I do read all the time. But yes, I love to read. I think that reading allows a person not only to explore other worlds that they may never have explored before, it also can help develop you into elevating yourself and others by new thoughts and a way of surrounding yourself with positivity. Good.
Now, you may not like what I say. I don't know. I am a big audiobook guy. I'm not a person that can sit and just listen to a book, but I go through a lot of books. Audio, they have a app that you can check out books from your library, and I would do that. I love books. I'm not a big sit down and just read a book. So
that's okay, because
what is your favorite
thing? You're still getting the same. No, I don't dislike that. I think their own way, and believe it or not, if I have my choice, I would have my book read to me. But that's not all. I love the smell of going into a library and seeing the books and all that. I like that feel, that vibe, that gives that my soul joy. But if I'm going to read something and I have the option to have my computer read it to me, I let it read to me.
Cool. So this book is not an audio audio book.
Be but I have a confession. You ready for this?
Yes, ma'am.
I don't like to read in front of people. Ever since I was a little kid, as soon as I would hear, and English would be after lunch, that we were going to have to read in front of the class, I'd get sick and go to the nurse. And what they would do is, oh, she's sick, let her lay down for a nap. And then I found out if I took the thermometer and put it next to the heater, they'd send me home and I could be home and watch Leave It to Beaver and, and Friends and, all the good shows. And so guess what I started doing? I'd be home in time to watch all the good shows. They rewarded me all the way through not reading in front of people. So an audiobook is a dream of mine and also a terror of itself for me to do.
Sometimes it's good to face your fears and do that. I know I'm probably preaching to the choir with that, but yes,
Face your
ma'am. Because I think it's cool. So this book is a seller, right?
That's correct. On
So
Amazon and on Barnes and Noble. I've been a bestseller in the crime, jury, and women's fiction, and one other category of Amazon. So and it's gone in and out depending on the time of year, I think too, and then also like the different media productions that I might do might, spike them up too. I do book signings in the Indiana area so far, in Chicago area. I haven't made it to Tennessee, but I'll let you know when I do. And
yeah,
what I really like about it, because I out of everything I've done, I think I really bring readers. And not only that maybe that they enjoyed it, but what journey it took them. Because the way I designed the book is so that those that identify it can do the next book with me, which is a workbook. And it's called
okay.
30 Balance. And it's coming out shortly. I don't have the date in front of me, but it's a workbook for us to help find joy. And it takes all 13 dimensions of a person's life. Usually we'll do goals on things like career, finances, but we don't do it on things like your personal journey to integrity or your personal journey in
Yes.
relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you have a plan for yourself on all of those 13 dimensions, then you feel more joy,
Yes, ma'am.
and I wanted people that read the book to also say, I think I could, because Paris, the main character, is completely out of balance, workaholic, bought into the whole idea that if you don't work hard, you're not going to be anything in the world, and there's a price to that kind of mentality. If you're working
Mm-hmm.
7 days, somebody's missing out, whether it be you're not traveling, or whether it's your loved ones are missing you, or whatever. Maybe something is amiss.
Yes, ma'am. So talk to me about like. I wrote a book. I have a best friend. One of my best friends. He's an author. He talks about those things, and I get to hear his opinion of trying to be on a bestseller or things like that. So when you're the bestseller, talk to me about your emotion and the excitement of being a bestseller.
Well, the thing is to get it written. So many people come to me and say, how can I be a bestseller? First, you got to get the thing written.
Yeah.
And people think, oh, does that mean I have to lock myself away and write for 2 weeks straight or a month? I thought that's unrealistic for most people. They have to eat and they have to work.
Mhm.
So I normally say write 1 page a day, and it's done in a year. 1 page a day, and
Okay.
it's done in a year. So then once you get past that year, you find a good partner that's going to help you become that bestseller. You're not going to do it on your own. You can't
Okay.
do it. It'd be very difficult, because once you put it, let's say you decide to do KDP's Amazon and upload it as a self-published author, then who's going to buy it? It doesn't just automatically get bought. Your friends will.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have a business plan for it, and that's
Yes, ma'am.
the key. And partners. So if you're going to do the partnership on your own, then that means you need to have your social media planned. It means you have to have certain people designated, maybe friends, family, that are going to share. Or, you can hire someone to do all that. But, you have to have a plan. So if you have the time to do it, you can do it yourself. Or in my case, because I also had my consulting, I'm like, I need a good publisher and a partner. And I went with Mindster Media, who helped me with their model. And basically the model is your social media must be, is 90 days. You make sure you get it in front of all the celebrities and all the different people with, a book review, that they can do book reviews. In my case, Meryl Hemingway picked it up. Then she did a YouTube video and that YouTube video is called Meryl Hemingway Praises Rhonda Parker Taylor's Crossroads. And in that, she reviewed the book and also then said why she liked the book and why it called to her. And it was very authentic. So being authentic in the marketing aspect of thing is very important. That people have to realize it's not just buy my book. There's an authentic story there. And I think she coined it, and this was the thrill for me, because when I watched the video, it's like, okay, she likes the book, that's good. But then at the very end, she talked about her own personal journey and how we all reach a crossroads, and every single one of the characters reaches a crossroads, and that's why it's called that.
Yes, ma'am.
Where you make a choice, whether it's Billy Knuckles, who got in the car with his friend that committed the crime, or whether, and had no business even being there, and we all probably could have had that happen to us at some point in our lives, or whether it would, was, Paris trying to, realize that her life wasn't being fulfilled by being a workaholic. And we all reach a crossroads and then of her YouTube, she said, even chocolate has a expiration date. And think about it. Everything we love, that's a pretty deep statement. Everything we love at some point might end. And we have to reevaluate things. And so it sent a chill up my spine that not only did she like the fact that it was a suspense novel, but that it related to individuals. And so she wrote that, and the media stuff was working. And then all of a sudden I got this ding from the publisher with a screenshot of bestseller #1. And, and they do this little, it's like a ribbon that Amazon does that, that shows the #1 best-selling status. And I tell you, it was epic. There's no words to describe when you finally get to a point of something that, did I make $1 million because it was a bestseller? No, it wasn't about that. It was validation that I completed something that I always wanted to do. And there's nothing bigger than it. There's no price tag you can put on it. There's nothing better. And then you're like, okay, I can do it again. And it took me a long time to face the fears of putting Crossroads out there. Crossroads sat on my desk for probably a year or two before I even published it. Because after I was done, I was scared of being vulnerable. And we all feel that way. Nobody wants rejection.
But I'm going to start did you self-publish this? I know you talked about people around you to help you do this. So are you self-published with this, or?
So this is what they call a blended matrix publishing. So you still are self-published, you own all rights, but they do the editing, they do they help you with all the marketing, they help you set up a plan that should help you be successful in launching your product or your book. And the good thing about that is you get to decide, do you want to own all rights? Do you want to, is your royalty going to be only partial where they get a piece of the pie? You get to decide what works best for you. And for me, I wanted all rights. I didn't want to give up my rights. So that's what our contract. So it's a contracted deal, just like a publishing company. Only they help you with the marketing, and and you put in they put their part in, and then you go for creating a successful product.
Yes, ma'am. All right. Yeah, I wanted to ask that because I love talking about the book, but I want to know like what happens on the business side of it. And then obviously going to school for business kind of help you with this process, with the business side of it, right? Like you.
Because I had gone to the traditional route at first, and I had to decide I'm old. Do I have time to wait this long? The traditional process takes about 3 years, and then like
Okay.
I had gone that route, and then I had a publisher pull out after we had an agreement. So, for me, doing the blended matrix made sense because I had so much resources I could do, but I didn't want to have to sit and figure out, okay, how do you make a cover? How do you make, do the barcode? You know, what are we going to do at this point? I wanted someone to teach me the business. And I think that's where a
Okay.
lot of authors don't succeed, and that is that they don't realize that it's a business. If you don't have a product that's professional, it's not going to sell. And so having a partner that knows the business aspect of it made a huge amount of sense for me, because having the ability to have someone that says, no, you don't want to do this, or no, that's not the right price for this book, or all the questions that an author has when they're sitting down to do the business aspect, having a partner, at least for, is the best thing. Like, for instance, a lot of the self-published people may have great books, but they don't know that if you don't put it on a distributor's website and make it available, and that it's returnable, you'll never get in a bookstore.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
so then
You teach me something.
So you want to know those ins and outs. You need to be on Ingram Sparks website. If you're not, no bookstore can order it. Now, they might be able to do a consignment deal with you. A consignment deal is where you bring your own books, and they may let you set up and do a little booth for the day. But they're not going to be able to bring them into each one of their stores and you not be there.
Yes, ma'am. So, how is opportunities being a bestseller? I know you say you do some book signings. Do you do anything else, like outside of podcasting? I'm talking to you on a podcast, but do you have other opportunities to do stuff with the book?
Yeah. Books, being an author and being an entrepreneur provides all kinds of opportunities for you. One, you be like you said, the podcast. Two, you can do speaking engagements. Three, book signings. You can do conferences. There's all kinds of opportunities. You can be with a local ad agency and be their talent.
Okay.
So that you can pretty much, it's what you feel comfortable doing and what your book is. Like, for instance, I'll take two really good examples from Meinster authors. I have one peer that wrote a book on fishing in the Gulf Coast, and it's in the Gulf Coast. It's all about the adventure of fishing and angling and the experience of being in nature. He gets to speak with at the bass conventions, different, not only book signings, but also in resorts that that have the fishing expeditions too. And then I have another author friend from the same publisher, Meister Media. Her book is about grieving. She's from Canada, and her book is called The Worst Life Has to Offer You. And hers is, she gets a lot of speaking engagements and stuff for, with churches and communities, because hers is about the loss of both of her sons. And, so depending on what genre that you write in, brings you different is you have to build your brand. And that's why I say it's a business, it's a product. And so I know my brand or my writing or my genre not only is suspense, but it's also helping build others. I want them to think about how that tension in the novel also can be part of your life if you're not careful. You know, my next book, which is a series, takes one of the younger characters and it talks about why she keeps being victimized, and and a lot of it has to do with how we present ourselves in the world. But so yes, it definitely brings opportunities to you, but you have to be open to them, and you have to define that within your strategy for it to do that.
I got you. So when you write the book, I see that when you write that book and with the characters, I'm trying to figure out how to answer this question because I know I have it in my head. So like, because I believe there's life lessons in the book. So when you're developing your characters, are you like, how do you go about seeing the life lesson in that character? Do you start it off, or as you write the book, it develops, or oh, I got it now? How do you do that? I don't know if I'm asking the question right.
For me, in Crossroads, the character revealed it as I was writing, because I like I said, I thought it was all going to be just about the jury trial and the lessons you learn in the legal system. But as I started writing, I realized that it was more. There was more to the character. There was more depth, and that was, what developed into the crime, the motive, etc. And so she kind of defined it, and the characters kind of defined it in the first one. And then I had to go back and say, well, where do we get these lessons from? And that's where I found that Proverbs defines it for us. In the second one, I think I already had it. I had it defined at the beginning, because once I learned the process in book one, I realized quotes are important. Certain things are important. What is quotable from your books? What can people take away? And so I started thinking about that as I was writing, and I realized in the second one, it's that we all buy into what people tell us and teach us, and sometimes we don't have discernment to know when it's not to our best interest. Let's give an example of the character that's I'm developing now. Her name's Hope, and she's in a scenario where she's wanting to impress her bosses, and they leave her with a kid for the first time alone, and a male subject comes in, and she knows the protocol of how she's supposed to address that person, and she gets a bad feeling like this isn't the right thing to do. It's not safe. And she does anyway, because she doesn't want them to look bad upon her. And she doesn't want to think she's not capable of running the place by herself. So she puts herself in a situation where she can be robbed or raped or whatever might happen in the book. And because she didn't listen to that discernment, she put herself in a vulnerable situation. And she continues to do this because she keeps buying into her safety isn't as important as what society tells us, or our bosses tell us, or our parents tell us is the right, or whoever tells us is the right thing. And so she did.
That's cool.
Counts herself. And we do that all the time as human beings.
I like that. So I have another question for you. I'm all about like having peace and happiness in life and things like that. So like outside of writing, where do you find your joy? Like what makes you happy in life?
Well, that's very good question, first of all, because I think we all are in search of it.
Mhm.
I come from a very high thriving family. You've entrepreneurs that do a little bit of everything, and I found for me that I had to take pride in my life.
Mhm.
So I didn't want the big house. I wanted the smaller house. I wanted to be able to walk out of my home and be in my own park, not have to go to a
Mhm.
park. And so I bought more land, less house. And then I find my joy in enjoying, and I call them critters, but I had someone in a podcast just recently say, "What do you mean by critters?" And they were probably thinking my snakes, all these
Mhm.
things. But I enjoy nature. Mother Nature can
Okay.
teach you everything you need to know. So I open my blinds and I watch what's out in the world and that comes through my property. It might be a fox, might be a coyote, it might be a deer, it might be a raccoon, it might be a bird, it might be just peace. It does, it could be anything. And I find that, if I can reflect then just even for a few minutes about my next steps, um or just let my brain relax, because we're always a human doing, is what my niece
Mhm.
taught me to say. A human doing is different than a human being. You
Yeah.
know, doing, checklist. And that's how we do our lives, right? uh, you know, Podcast, this, that. If I take a moment and be a human being and meditate and practice some mindfulness and whatever is revealed from me in those moments, then I can have peace. You can find it in religion sometimes and you can find it in others, but really it has to come from within inside you in accepting
Yes, ma'am.
who you are and what you have to offer.
And that's a thing for certain people, to accept and embrace yourself. And it's just taking pride. You say you wanted something. Pride. I can't remember the way you said it, but just pride. You know,
Who you are.
and that, yeah, and I work up to something. I love doing my podcast, and I take pride in my podcast. But even like where I live at, I take pride in where I live at. I look at my apartment, and I'm like, I take pride in this. I worked hard to get this place when I didn't think I could get this place.
Right.
You know, certain things in my life that I do. I'm a cigar smoker. I enjoy sitting around having good conversations with people. I just did a podcast interview with somebody because they wanted to smoke a cigar with me while we were doing a podcast. So I went to the cigar lounge, and those are little things like that bring me joy. And I can sit back. I'm a person. Sometimes I have a hard time being in the moment, and smoking cigars have helped me kind of live in that moment and embrace that moment and not think about what happens next. So
Right.
those are a couple things that have gave me joy in life. Just being in the moment, just to have that joy in the moment.
That's wonderful that you found that about yourself. I think that that's probably what I get out of my wildlife. The same
Mm-hmm.
feeling that you get from the cigar when you have that moment by yourself and you're
Mm-hmm.
smoking it and you're relaxing and you're reflecting. When I look out the bay window and I see some kind of wildlife or even the peace and quiet and nothing's there, that's that same feeling. It's like the inhale and the exhale of finding who you are for that moment.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I get that. So I want to wrap up a minute, but I probably have two questions for you. Um, how it seemed like you had a lot of adversity in your life. I don't know how far back. I know you said you lost your son, things like that. And how do you overcome that? How do you don't get past it, but how do you
No, you're right.
deal with
You're
that adversity.
and everybody's a little bit different. So I can only say
Mhm.
what worked for me. Well, first, when the tragedy or the news or whatever happens,
Mhm.
um, you have to first, when I say accept it, sometimes you can't even accept it completely. It's like this
Mhm.
moment that you have to promise yourself you're going to be okay. It's like
Mhm.
acknowledging that there's a problem in the room, or around you or in the environment that's just like, oh my goodness, you're going to be okay. Take an inhale, take an exhale, have a cigar, look outside. And in one case,
Mhm.
it was a matter of when a house settles there, you get a crack in the wall or something. And I looked at it and I saw a crack I'd never seen before. And I followed it to the corner, and
Mhm.
and then a little voice, and it said, it was my mother's voice actually that I heard, and it said, it's going to be okay. And
Mhm.
then I had to say, okay, you've been through adversity before, you've had losses before. And I was like, okay, what do you know about what you need to do next? And the only thing that came to mind, and you're going to laugh at me, and everybody normally does, was if you watch Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and
Mhm.
and Frosty the Snowman and all those kids shows, they always tell you what you're supposed to do to be resilient. And
Mhm.
it was a song, when Frosty's melting, put one foot in front of the other. And today, every time adversity comes, I think of that song. And it could be the Heat
Mhm.
Mic, it could be any of those songs when you were kids. And I think about it because, one, the little jingle provides the soul with what it needs, which is a little bit of happiness along the way. And two, it's a lesson. Yes, if you put one foot in front of the other, you're faking it till you make it. You can, make whatever arrangements, do whatever you do, but it doesn't mean sit down and put yourself in the bed and not get up. Because if you
Yes,
don't
ma'am.
get up, then you've got a whole nother mental problem that you've got to deal with, and that is your own depression. And so I sing that little ditty, put one foot in front of the other, and I start addressing whatever it is that I have to address, because when you're stuck in a rut, it feels like overwhelming, and you don't know what to do to get that inspiration. You have to just
Mhm.
dig deep and find it yourself. My dad used to always say to us as kids, if it's meant to be, it's up to you. And that, I thought that was a very cruel thing to say to someone that wanted, new car, new this, new whatever, but it's true. Um,
Mhm.
if it's meant to be, it's up to you. So if you want to make a change in a career, if you want to address that overwhelming feeling inside, if you want to have energy, you've got to put in the work.
Yes, ma'am.
And that's the
Some so
hardest
easy.
thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's hard though, isn't it?
It is. The way it sounds like putting one foot forward is simple, but we make it so hard. And
Well, and
a lot of those shows,
it is hard.
go ahead.
It is hard
Mhm.
sometimes. But those shows do provide lessons that we forget about.
Yes, ma'am. And you're definitely right about that. And I want to ask you one more question.
Hmm.
We talked about writing in your book and everything. Um, can you give a little bit of advice for people starting off, or either starting or is writing that's stuck, some stuck? Do you have any advice for them or how to keep going outside of just the jingle?
Um, Other than the jingle, and that are stuck in an existential crisis, I would say, if you can't, if don't hesitate to seek a network of people that can help.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't matter if it's a professional. If you need professional help, get professional help. If you need a mentor, get a mentor. If you need a friend, get a friend. But don't always lean just on your family, because you know what? They have a life. They have to make
Mm-hmm.
it. They have to do it. So, when I lost D'Angelo, I pulled in every church. It didn't matter what denomination. It didn't matter which religion. It didn't matter what, whether there was a big crowd, small crowd, in the suburbs, in the city, whether I'd been there not before, whether I hadn't been there before. If I saw that they were open, I would pull in and ask for, prayer. They laid hands on me. I would cry. I would talk. I would, all of it.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you're in those situations, you're seeking to become outside of yourself and overcome the adversity. And the only way this happens is by gaining the inner strength back. It's no different than when someone works out, they work their core first. You have to get that inner discipline inside, and then examine what's limiting your beliefs in self to do it yourself. And eventually you'll uncover that you have the strength within. But at first you don't feel like it. You just feel so weak. You feel like, you're a Gumby that's going to fall to the ground.
Mm-hmm. I get that. I get that. Well, Miss Rhonda, I thank you so much for taking some time out today to talk to me. I really do appreciate that, and I ain't going to let you go, so you can have I don't know what you're doing today, but you can get to whatever you're doing today. So
I think I got to get a key made for my car because I broke it.
oh man. Well.
So I appreciate you having me, and thank you, and all your listeners out there. I hope you had a wonderful time with us today. And just remember, Then Wait is there for you as far as overcoming your adversities and thinking of inclusive ideas with each other and being just the best unique version of yourself. Remember to share, like, and participate whenever possible, because you'll get something every single time you participate in this podcast.